Um, Maybe we should talk about the podcast. Maybe this is the first episode, and we dove in, and we didn't talk about
Yeah.
things. And so if we talk about that now, I can cut it to the front. Yeah. So the fitness and point play is it's I was the name I took to be approachable. Fitness point play. I wanted to appeal to a lot of people because it should be. I think point sparring can be a fun activity to keep fit for more than just people who are super serious competitors. And I was trying to sell it to some tech people. I did a presentation up in Maryland back in June, and so the channel was originally in support of that. So, but the podcast I felt like fits in. I'm feeling there's an appetite here because sometimes when I'm like, well, I did a rating system for cards. Let me do that for karate. People are just like hard to sell. And then when I say I'm doing a podcast, you want to be on, people are like, yeah, that sounds cool. I'll show up and talk. So, so yeah, super happy to have you as a co-host. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
This is amazing. I hanging out, talking about fitness and point karate. This is perfect.
I'm interested in the business of karate, teaching karate, in actual technique and how to explain things. It sounds like there's a lot of meat that you've dug into with students there in terms of like what to throw when and against who. And as much as I'm interested in strategy and games, I usually apply that to intellectual games. I'm only really just starting to think about karate, as crazy as that sounds, because normally it's like card games.
That's where it goes from a circle to a sphere.
Well, yeah, hopefully. Yeah, multidimensional. That's the thing about karate. It's like it's not a well-defined space because when you have chess is a well-defined board, it's there's a lot there, but like karate, physical movement in a three-dimensional space is not a well-defined territory. And you see people who just decide they're not going to play by the laws of physics, like Bailey Murphy. Yeah, I remember Marty in the '90s. He would pick up and like double pop a side kick at distance, and he would look like he would defy physics just by keeping his leg up in the air and extended that far for long enough to throw two side kicks.
My one of my good friends when I started going
Or
to Marty's, we were convinced for about 8.5 months there that whenever we fought Marty, he would just watch us, and every time we blinked is when he would hit us with a back fist. Because it was just like, boom, he's timing our blinks. We
right,
can't see him move.
right, people would say he was fast, and his timing was just so good. It wasn't, yeah, I mean, fast enough, but the timing was so good.
It's one of those speed beats power, precision beats speed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the right answer is to go ahead and record small talk. I think I hear other podcasts doing that and just edit it out if it goes in the wrong direction or if it's something you don't want to be heard.
I agree with that. I feel like that balances out pretty well. And we're both pretty passionate about karate anyway, so it'll intertwine pretty organically, hopefully.
Right.
So, you come up to Hub City yesterday and got some rounds in?
I did. I did birthday rounds. I turned 45
Uh,
yesterday, and yeah.
Happy belated birthday.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I woke up. I wasn't feeling great, and I was thinking maybe I could go to Columbia, but I don't know for sure that that's going to be a good workout. I don't know for sure that it's running because some weekends I think people go places and they just don't do it. And then I worked out hard at home, and I looked up, and the bet signal, the hub signal went out at 3:20 for a 6 o'clock workout. I'm like, wow, okay, so I have a hour and a half drive. I can make it. Yeah, it was great. It was great.
Nice, nice. Yeah, my birthday's coming up Saturday, and I'm not really sure
Oh no, you have to come work
how,
out.
where, or when. Yeah, yeah, I'm gonna be at some workout somewhere. I cannot do
Okay.
karate on the birthday.
How does that not equal you ending up, in Belton?
Oh, it doesn't. Like I'll be there. I'll be there at 10 o'clock.
Okay, you want to do Williamston at 9 too?
Maybe. I don't really
Okay,
see a reason I couldn't.
okay.
I'll have to double check. So, because I think, because we're doing something later that day, so the kids are going to Grammy and Grandpa. So I'm not sure if I'm dropping them off on the way or if Kay's taking
Mm,
care of that. But yeah, either 9 or 10 o'clock, I'll be somewhere.
okay, okay. I might be somewhere 9 and 10 o'clock.
Nice.
That's I've done that twice in the last couple of months, and that is a real workout.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think I've been to this school of Chads. I think I've been by it, but I don't think I've actually had a chance to like be at one of the workouts there.
Oh, really? Okay.
Um, yeah, and this is gonna be like the last Saturday before the finals of the circuit, right?
It is. It is. Oh wow. So, I just jumped through the hoops, and the microphone is working this time. The last episode we recorded, we got half an hour of solid one-sided content, and it'd be nice to like hit some of the high points again. I feel like it's hard to
Okay.
get it organically, but it's also painful to lose it. So
Right. Yeah, I would agree with
I
that.
had some. I had
Because we
some.
were because we were reviewing Brackett's fight with Jack Felton. Um,
Right.
and
Did you see Brackett's fight with who is it? Kevin? Is it Kevin Walker? Did the K Swift?
yeah, yeah.
You did?
Now I didn't see a recent one. I saw one of him and Walker at I want to say it was Battle of Atlanta, but I think it might have actually been a couple of years ago.
Okay. Yeah. No, he took him to
Um,
overtime a couple weeks ago in Dillon.
oh wow,
It was close.
nice.
I know. I know. Wow.
Yeah,
It's like Brackett 2 months ago. I like to imagine that if I had a good day and he had a bad day, maybe I could win. And the Bracket, like in the last month, I'm just like, yeah, all right. I'm never. That's gone. I can't even imagine that anymore.
yeah. I feel that every time I get to bounce now, because it's more and more like infrequent that I'm actually getting to bounce and enjoy and things, and every time it's the most humbling thing in the world, and that's what's really cool about it is because it's like I'm starting to I'm starting to get to the age where like certain things that were very easy to do when I was younger that I didn't really think about, and now that I haven't done them as much, it's a little harder. Like flexibility and stuff like that, because I'm notorious for not really stretching and things. But
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned stretching. I was just at the park for my weekly, show up and cross my fingers routine, hoping people eventually follow suit. Gotta find them and hit them over the head and drag them in. But I filmed a stretching video. Um, Probably will. I want to script it because I'm not satisfied with how my videos are looking and sounding, and I'm not sure how to make them better. So I'm gonna try scripting it. But stretching is important. But it's like I noticed a couple years ago that when I didn't stretch at the end of the workout, I would be still throwing kicks at waist level.
right,
I might be throwing kicks with my back foot sort of not really turned backwards to get that full extension because I couldn't really reach anyway because I was tight.
mm,
So for workouts, especially when it's not an organized workout where we're doing, systematic stretching, I force myself to now.
yeah. The last few times that I went to Marty's, I did a lot better about making sure that I made time for myself. To just kind of find a place and stretch and make sure I was at least loose. Because there was a bunch of times that I would end up in a situation where I would go to throw a kick and just couldn't kick because my leg was so tight that even if I had have gotten it up, I couldn't have got it all the way out to actually throw a kick. It was more like just a chamber of a kick. And so I started doing some more stretches. The best I ever felt was when I honestly stretched every day and just kind of worked on more mobility versus stretching to do any certain activity. I really need to get back to that because I felt a lot better just in general.
So yeah, I like to, when I'm stretching, I like to make 3 passes on my legs, from preferably slightly different directions. But I'm focused on the muscle and like not fighting it, trying to relax into the stretch more, so that I get the mechanics of pulling the muscle, but not like mentally, fighting against the stretch. And I also really like to engage my hips on one of the passes rather than my leg muscles. Uh, Going up the back, hips and going up the back.
Right. Yeah, that was one thing that one of the first classes that I actually got to do with Marty that we did different was um, we did this stretch where we would spread our legs out and we would lean over and grab our right leg and try
Mm.
to put our chest to our knee, and then we do our left leg in the middle. And the first time that I did it with Marty, he was very particular about the placement of our feet and which direction our toes went and
Oh.
how we stretched. And I was like, okay, that's at some point you're like, okay, well, this is just kind of stuff that maybe didn't quite get to me in the generational teaching and things like that. And then we did the right, left, and the middle, and then he made us turn our feet a different way and do it again. And it stretched a completely opposite part of the leg, and it was more of a well-rounded stretch. And that was one thing that, like, as a kicker, I wish I'd been doing that 10 years
Mm.
before I started doing it.
Okay.
But that was one of the big things that really helped. That and I had done wall stretches where you're holding onto the wall and you throw your leg out, and then your teammate kind of helps lift your leg up for a little extra stretch and stuff. Um, and we did that before, but when I started doing classes at Marty's, we were doing it every class. And at first you're kind of like, oh no, I can go as high, I can go high. And then eventually, after like the third or fourth day, it's not really a new thing that you're doing. You're like, okay, well, this is the part where they lift my leg. And then eventually you start relaxing into it. And then you start getting that stretch and it starts going higher with less effort. And you're like, oh wow, like this is actually like how it's done. Um, and then slowly fade away from that as we get older sometimes, or at least I did. it was it was less fun to stretch than it was to go and bounce when I was younger, and I wish I had a different opinion back then.
Well, I always had fun stretching because I was always good at it. I never needed it when I was younger. It came naturally. We would go put the palms on the floor, and I would put my hand under my foot and pull and bend my elbow.
Wow,
Yeah.
man, I eventually got there on like splits and stretches and stuff, but I had a lot of help. People just pushing and pushing and pushing. Eventually, you kind of get there.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I wasn't naturally good at it. I got there, but I didn't really learn a good way to continuously get there and maintain it.
We talked last time in the lost conversation about teaching and schools, and you had a school. I learned for a long time. I knew you had a school. I didn't know the history of it, but 14 years, I think you said.
Yeah, 14 years. Yeah.
And
It was really cool. I Man, that was the adventure of a lifetime. It was so much fun because I was, you know, I I'm about to be 34, so I had the school for 14 years. I was like 16 when we first started out.
okay, well,
So my coming into adulthood and growing into a young adult and things like this was in this environment of running a school and things. Um, and it's so funny because I think we all have a passion that fits us perfectly, and I think that sometimes not everybody gets to find that, and I feel like it was really cool that I kind of got to find my passion early, and I had my dream job, everything I ever wanted, and now here I am later on, and I'm in a situation where I'm like, I want to get back to that, but I want to
Okay.
do it better and I want to do it right.
Hmm.
um, but yeah, it's the most fulfilling thing. I didn't really understand how important it was and how much it meant until years after we had opened, and I started getting, I call them kids, but they're all of a sudden they're not kids, and they're showing up. They've come back from going to college and they've settled into their life, and then they're talking to me and they're like, you were really like kind and took time to listen to like what was actually going on, and helping me understand that like the lessons that we learned here of perseverance and dedication and consistency, that they pay off in these other aspects of life too. And it was really fulfilling, especially towards the end, because at that point I had become a dad, and some of my kids had grown up, and they had kids that they were bringing to me to teach, and it just great. I've seen kids that their first day they couldn't stand on one leg and kick without falling over, and then later on they just didn't give up, and all of a sudden they're testing and achieving good ranks. They're becoming great students. Um, I've seen martial arts and karate in general just take kids that were just struggling to understand and learn something in school, and being disruptive because they didn't have an outlet or a way to express themselves creatively, or dealing with frustrations and disappointment. And then they start karate, and you have all those things, and they end up kind of reevaluating, shifting perspective, reframing, um, and a lot of cool stuff to where they're making better grades, and they're like looking out for, okay, well, what college am I going to go to and what am I going to do, and to see people blossom and grow is just a beautiful thing in general. And it just seems like when I was running the school, it was there in abundance, and I got to have a front row seat and enjoy it for people. It was really really cool, you know.
So, so how deeply have you thought about a path back to that? Have you,
uh, I feel like on and off I've probably thought about it for 3.5 years. As soon as we kind of realized that, um, with the pandemic and everything and where we were, and um, it just didn't really make a whole lot of sense to, for what it could have gotten to, I couldn't continue in the place that I was as far as in life in general. I had a lot of stuff I had to learn, and I couldn't continue to learn while doing and balancing in a world that was just kind of falling apart, for lack of better words, at the time. And I think that the moment that the decision was made that we're going to have to close the school, I think from that moment forward, it was somewhere in there just, okay, how do we get back? Like, we lost this round. What are we going to do differently to readjust and get ready for the next round? Because, right now we're tired and we got to recover somehow before we go out for the next one. Um, but then just kind of realizing too that there's like,
so,
if you take something very negative and you pull a single positive thing out of it, it's no longer a negative thing to me. It can't be truly negative because you got some good from it, like Pandora's box almost. So with this, I didn't learn. I like to think of this as I didn't learn how to lose so much as I learned how to not lose the exact same way the next time.
so by learn, you mean in the context of the business of karate?
Yeah, the business aspect of it. Martial arts karate, love that, makes perfect sense. Business and marketing and strategies and billings and things, I struggle with that part
Okay.
a lot.
And this was all. A lot of this was due to the death of your mother.
Yeah, Yeah.
Okay.
It was a very big contributor in a lot of ways. Um, yeah, I was really young when we opened, and she did pretty much everything business wise and things
Mm.
like that. Kept us afloat. And she had ended up in poor health. She had cancer. She ended up in end stage liver disease, and just overall not doing well. And when she eventually did finally pass, um, it's traumatic because you're dealing with the loss of a parent. It's always going to be tough in some capacity, regardless of the complexities of the relationship. But um, it's a strange thing, and the fact that my mom was so good and loved me completely and was a great mom and loved everybody so much and everybody loved her so much that it almost kind of evolved quickly into a I'm hurting really bad, but all of these other people are hurting, and she cares about them. So fast forward a little bit of time, and then you realize, well, there's one other big problem. I don't really know how to run a business,
Right.
and
And it's a lot easier
I
when
like,
you have what is essentially my dad bought a restaurant when he retired and the market dipped and he unretired.
yeah,
um, I mean, not out of necessity, but he was a little bored, and it's like maybe I'd rather do something else with money than leave it in stocks. And
right,
his mind got turning. And the point I'm getting to is that ultimately, for a few months, I quote ran it, but he was in the background, and that's a lot of free labor.
yeah,
It's a lot of experience. My dad was older to start with, and in addition, it's that labor. And once you roll that up and you go, not only do I have to learn these things, but I have to be so good I fit them into the context of all the other things I'm doing. That's a lot.
right, yeah, yeah. It quickly devolved into where it wasn't as fun. In a lot of ways, it was my peace and my therapy on everything in life. As long as I could get on a karate floor,
Right.
everything else is okay. Um,
It's such a shame. I
but
was
then,
talking to a
yeah,
friend whose child is they're fighting with insurance, but ultimately insurance pays for a lot of therapy, and it's not going to pay for karate.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's sad because it's some of the best therapy to to an extent. You need the mental, psychological, emotional tools as well. But yeah,
yeah.
it gets you.
Sometimes I feel like my feelings get so big that I have to release them before I can kind of look at them and actually understand them. And any kind of physical exertion to me like helps me release just
Mm,
emotions and feelings and things like. And I I think I think I said this last time, but um with me, the thing that made so much sense about karate and why it was just so freeing from everything was it's really, really hard to worry about all these little minute details and making sure everything is taken care of when somebody's actively trying to hit you in the head.
mm,
It's a lot easier to kind of worry about that and just kind of be free in the moment to, do something that you love and do it with people you enjoy doing it with. Um, yeah.
yeah, I in talking with Matthew last week, the in Greenwood, he well, let me step back. One of the reasons that I started fitness and point play, the the container for this podcast. I have a YouTube channel I set up early in the year, and I wanted to lower the barriers to entry for karate because I feel like there's no magic. People now. I saw the most talented kid I've seen recently just learn from YouTube, and you have to have other people to practice with to develop timing and distancing. But technique, it's like it's a sport, and you can learn, and it shouldn't
Yeah.
be barriers to entry are not naturally that high. So I don't know where I was going with that. I had a plan. All right, you talk now.
I think like the cool thing for me that's always kind of resonated with karate is there is no off season. Like we 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 do karate all the time, and a lot of ways like equipment makes things a lot easier. Don't get me wrong, but essentially, like if you were just in your backyard, you could figure out a way to practice karate.
Right. Well,
You
that's what
know,
I'm doing now. I'm showing up at
um,
the park and I'm telling people just come here and spar with me. I will teach you how to
right?
spar. And right now, I don't have any takers. I'm not. It's hard to get people interested in what you're doing. That's. I think a lot of people don't understand how hard it is. I did this with cards a couple of years ago. I tried to build a card circuit and Magic the Gathering. I was a big Magic player. Um, yeah, I have another friend that's teaching at a school, and he has a captive audience. There's a lot of students and funding, and that would be a dream if we could just like get schools interested.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think the it's one of those things where I feel like if you put karate up against anything, it's gonna seem exciting. But it's also because I think it's like the most exciting thing too. Um, but being able to take that first step to see somebody doing something that's fun and to just say, you know what, I'm gonna try it. And that first step is always the hardest. I think as soon as one person gives it a try, that person's gonna be like, oh, that's really cool. That was my favorite thing was seeing. Every time somebody come into school, I always gave them 2 classes free. I was like, come
Okay.
try 2 classes free. And they're like, well, and I'm like, well, for one, you've never done it before. Try one class. And I said, I look at karate classes like
Excuse
chips.
me.
Yeah, I can't eat just one chip and be satisfied. I gotta at least eat two. And so they would come and try the 2 classes because at that point, it's real intimidating the first time you do something new, and nobody wants to do anything wrong, but it's not really like that. And so they try it and they're like, but by the second time they come back, the nerves are gone. They've already done it the first time. The hardest part's already over and done with. Now it's the time where we get to learn and have fun. Um, and I think that was always really important. But just taking that first step of just being like, all right, nah, I'm gonna try it. And my other the other thing that I've heard a lot, and I agree with it. I've fallen into it several times myself too. But I gotta get in shape first. Like I've gotta get ready first. But
Mm,
karate is like it's you know I know it's not magic, but it meets you at whatever level you are at, and it grows with you from then on. I've seen 80-year-olds do karate for the first time that they were having a hard time. They certainly couldn't do a lot of the stuff that most young teenagers could do. But they started with doing just one thing, and then they kind of worked on punching and blocking and hands up, and eventually then I had a guy come in and tell me, he said, guess what? And I was like, what? And he said, I put my jacket on. I was like, put your jacket on? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, me too. And he was like, no, I haven't been able to put my jacket on because my arms didn't work right. He had to get help to get his jacket on and off. And then in doing like jabs and crosses and hooks and back fist and body punch, he had built up enough that he was putting his jacket on himself. And that was a big deal for him. And he was super happy about it. And it's all because he just decided to take that one step, that one time, and try it. You know?
so how did life pressures affect like in your 14-year run? Were you at some point were you doing well enough that, given the added pressures of having a family, would have been feasible, or was that one of the feed-ins in terms of why you
Um,
had to step back?
well, the the biggest kind of thing and hindrance that stopped us, because when we started growing, and then we got a bigger location, and then we filled that place up,
Okay.
and
So how
we
many
ended
students
up
did you have?
towards the end, I had fallen off to where I only had about 20 to 30. At my biggest, I easily had between 75 and 100. Um,
Oh, my owl died.
oh
Okay,
no.
that's more than I realized. I did not realize that was a nice sized place then.
Yeah, yeah, we had it was good. We used every part of it, but we weren't really strategic on how we got there. And so we ended up in this horrible situation. We were too big to be a small school, and we were too
Okay.
small to be a big school.
Hmm. So explain
And
the differences.
so like to me, the big schools they have all these extra programs within it. They have room for other styles of martial arts or workout programs in addition to karate, and that was something that I was really big wanting to do. I had I come from the school when I opened up. I was a part of Southeast Karate, and when I opened up, I decided to be family martial arts. Um, One because I was looking at like my lineage. It was Marty Night Karate, Spartanburg martial arts, Southeast Karate, family martial arts, just kind of
So
flipping them back and forth.
Southeast Karate. I'm not sure I'm familiar with that progression. I wasn't around for a long time.
Yeah, so in 2001, Mike Billings decided to leave Spartanburg martial arts and open his own school.
Okay.
Um, it wasn't a super amicable split at the time.
Yeah.
A lot of us kind of didn't really know that. We just kind of showed up, and
Right.
um, you know, things are things, and people are people, and feelings are feelings. But it all ended up being water under the bridge eventually. Um, but it was to me, it was really cool to go from like because I started at Sparmer Martial Arts, and then I went over to Southeast Karate. We went down to Marty. We're like, hey, we want to open up a karate school. Um, and he's like, okay. And then trying to figure out what to call it and things like that. And it just, everything seemed to fit so good. But I wanted to go back to martial arts because I wanted to do more than just one thing. And I wanted to be this giant widespread thing that appealed to everybody and everybody could just have a home at and be family and train together and see different things and try whatever that they wanted to. Um, and then we did good starting out. And then when we expanded, the bigger school that we moved into was part of a plaza that had these wall dividers. And the walls, they were not support walls. There was a gap like this at the bottom of each wall that was just kind of covered by molding. And we asked the guy that was we were renting from when we moved in, we're like, how hard would it be to take this wall out? And he was like, well, it wouldn't be hard at all. It wouldn't be nothing. And we said, is this something that you would be willing to do? Would be knock this wall out, charge us double, and us expand that way. Um, and he was like, yeah, sure, sure, sure. I can't promise I won't rent it out beforehand. And we're like, well, 6 months to a year in, if it's meant to be, it'll be there. And if not, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So,
I'm
um,
sorry. So you the internal non-support walls you wanted to tear out?
yeah, we wanted to tear one out and rent 2 units from him, so we would have one giant school instead of one smaller school.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
And he said you could do that, but he wasn't going to guarantee it would be there to rent.
Yeah, so he said that, if you guys are ready to do it and you want to do it, we'll take the wall out. You
Mm,
guys can rent both of these and pay for both. But until you guys are ready to do it, it's still for rent. And if somebody wants to rent it out to do something, then we're like,
okay.
hey, absolutely, do what you got to do
Uh,
for sure. And then a year rolls up and we ask him, we're like, hey, can we take this wall out and do two? Um, and he kind of like he didn't answer the first call. We left a voicemail for him to call us back. We called him back like the next day. We'd sent a message, and then finally we ran across him. He had come by through the parking lot, and we waved him down, and we're like, "Hey, just want to know, like, if we can't, that's fine. Just let us know. But we're really wanting to take this wall out and have a bigger school. And it was like, well, what if we just cut like archways? And you can have like an archway here and an archway here, so you can have two buildings, but you just have a divider wall in the middle. And at the time, I was like, the issue that I have is I have puzzle mats that I don't even have that I'm not even using for my floor, and the big seamless mat that I have has a whole nother section. So my plan was to take the wall out because that one mat would go all the way past that wall, and then I could set up puzzle mat rings, so that way we would have three big rings and then one giant mat that could just be like a pit or something. And then the archway, I was like, I really don't think that's going to be what we need. Like we would want the full open space. And he was just like, well, no, you can't do it. And is what it is. But the hunt for a new location started slowing down. That's when Mom had really started kind of getting sick. And so expansion just kind of came to a screeching halt until we kind of dealt with all of that. And then that ended up being a long, drawn out thing. And then when after that happened, the business started going smaller and smaller. And then it was really unfortunate because we essentially got together with all the students in December, and I was like, hey guys, we're gonna have to do something because we can't make it the way we are. I'm gonna have to raise tuition. I'm gonna have to go up in prices a little bit. I got to do something. But my thing was, and what we talked about, we're not going up on prices unless everybody agrees to it and everybody's okay to do it. Because at that point, it was just a small few of us that was really a core, and I wanted it to be a joint thing, and they all were like, yeah, sure, let's do it, and they all pay money. We started making money in January of 2020, and if it had continued the way it was going, we were on the perfect trajectory to turn everything around, and then COVID in March just crippled everything.
So back on the point of like people like getting to the point where you have students that may want to go and start a school. That's always tricky, and I guess a lot of people don't realize that. And I feel like the economics of karate a lot of times are really hard to make work anyway. Is that accurate,
Yeah.
or do you think once you have momentum that it's not that bad?
So I truly feel like the economy of it is just waves, right? It's like a roller coaster going up and down. Um, Everybody's going to drop off in the summer. It's going to pick up around school time. It's going to drop off in the spring a little bit because everybody's going on vacation, this and that. And around Christmas, it kind of tends to get a little less crowded and things like that. Um, so to me, I think the main thing of it is for it to be successful, it almost has to be a business that does business things, and then the karate is like an extra thing,
Right.
almost. Meaning like you're selling merchandise or you're enrolling in whatever program that goes and does this, be it like almost like an after school kind of,
Right. I know
things like that.
the Greenwood School is looking hard at an after school program that's not even like karate centered. It's,
Yeah, yeah.
it's
And I think a lot of the like what's going on in the world at the time of it impacts it too. Like, in the '70s we had Billy Jack, we had movies,
sure.
that were
Karate is
like,
just not as popular as it used to be.
yeah, yeah, and that's a shame. But I feel like the karate that is like spotlighted now is almost like it's violent for the sake of violent, and it's not as artful as it used to be in
It's
a lot of
interesting you
ways.
say that. Last time we covered, the point that karate tournaments, it felt like to me that the tolerance for heavier contact had gone up. That in the '90s there was this feeling that we trained really hard and we didn't hurt each other. And I think you pointed to maybe the mid aughts where things might have started to loosen a little bit, in your opinion. I wasn't really engaged, and you thought that maybe that had started to ratchet up. Do I
Yeah,
remember that right?
yeah. I think around that time it kind of changed a little bit. I think it almost to me it was like, and it's on my brain because I was watching old fights the other day. Um, but around like 99 and 2000, the some of the black belt competitors, it was very much like you would hear a slap and then they would raise their hand up like I did that, and that had kind of got to be a thing. And I understand and respect it. It's very much traditional. They do the body punch and the hiya to sell the point and stuff. Um, but there was some things that was just very not clean. And it became a no, that was my glove, that was my glove, that was my glove, and all that stuff. And then I think that MMA kind of picking up popularity and things like that, and seeing more of an avenue for kickboxing, and Raymond Daniels kind of moving in both directions, doing karate and kickboxing around, I think it was like 2010. I started seeing him do more kickboxing. Um, but he was actively competing in bluegrass, actively going and competing in like semi contact and full contact in Europe, and kind of bringing that in a little bit almost, that now it feels more like fighters are fighting and competing, and it's nice to see.
Right. I'm sure having the MMA to take some of the thunder from karate. Karate people like looked up and said, can we take it back, or maybe we can mark it by saying this is an avenue to MMA, or there's lots of reasons I can imagine that happened.
Yeah. So with my beginner belts, I was very straight line on combos, as far as like we would drill pull side side back fist body punch, just kick kick punch punch, kick kick punch punch, because it's a pretty good solid base that's pseudo aggressive and streamlined as far as competition and things like that. And it's a good kind of balance thing. Then when my kids or adults became intermediate belts, I tried to shift more on working on angles and setups and like fakes almost, as far as like picking your leg up and sliding across, and then but you're going to blitz instead. You're not actually going to throw the kick. And then with my advanced belts, I did a lot more angles and more spins. And what do we do? Like the difference between an open stance and a closed stance. Whereas in the beginner belts, I would teach like, okay, if you guys are both in a right stance, then it's a closed stance, and you're wanting to throw your round kick versus your hook kick. If it's, you're in a right stance and they're in a left stance, it's an open stance. So you want to use your hook kick and axe kick versus your round kick coming from the back, because you have more range. But then by the time they're advanced belts, the same principle is there, but it's expanded upon in the sense of, okay, well, if they throw a kick, you're going to try to do this. And I'm a firm believer that nothing works for everybody. Like, things that work for me are not going to work for other people. Things that work for you are not going to work for me. Some things, yes, but everything, no, because we're all different. So my philosophy is, if it works for you, use it. That's great. If it doesn't work for you, you're still responsible for knowing that it exists. Because
Mm,
just because you can't do it, somebody could do it to you.
sure.
Um,
I went to
yeah,
Bailey. Brackett had Bailey Murphy in for a seminar some months ago now, and he said at the end of the seminar, just take what resonates, or take what works for you and use that, and don't worry about trying to make everything I say work.
yeah. I think I read a thing about Bruce Lee, and he said the same thing too. Um, just that. you use what's useful and discard what's not. Um,
Yeah. Speaking of Bailey, he's going to be back. Marty's having him back at the 1st of November. So
oh, cool.
yes, definitely should put that on your calendar.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's and Brackett is going to be speaking at a seminar in Charlotte at the 1st of October. So that'll be really good.
Are you going to get to go to that?
I am.
Nice.
Malik Green is also going to be one of the presenters. It's a multi-way, multi-person gathering.
Very nice. Very nice.
Um, so we've been talking for a while. All right. Well, I guess maybe that should be it. Maybe we should leave something to talk about in a couple of weeks.
Sounds good.
Yep. Thank you for being here.